thank you. Welcome to the Executive Cabinet Member Leaders Portfolio meeting. Decisions taken in the presence of opposition sportspersons. Only a couple of items today. The first one is the monitoring of Executive Cabinet Member decisions. Vicky?
Yeah, there's quite a few actually that can come off this time. So the first one on procurement of third-party information has been completed. Intention to retender for recruitment system, the permission to retender for occupational health, marketing events and communication service review, the review of HR policies, the budget report, and the final long-term report can all come off this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, then moving on to the lost my document. Second item, this is the Treasury Management Out-Term Report for Q4. Is this
that
Graham,
will be
or?
myself. Thanks, Leader.
Graham? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the report sets out the performance of the Treasury Management activities at Q4, and I'm pleased to report that all of the activity is within the indicators as set by Council in February 2023. I'm quite happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, members? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Slight question, because obviously I'm covering for Gary at this meeting today. Just in terms of, let me find the right chart. On page 10, there's a nice long chart of all the people we have money with as a local authority. And there was I think to say, a bit of kerfuffle a while ago about who we're lending money to. And I've read the report, and I know it's a very factual report. It's a financial report. But I think it's fair to say some mischief was extracted out of this report. And maybe there needs to be some clarity, or maybe a little bit of information, because this is a public-facing report. You know, you could... Well, there was mischief made. Let's be quite open about that, because you've got something like, what, £110 million with other local authorities as lending, you know, and obviously they're getting a very good rate of return on that, actually better than the banks, etc. And I think it would be useful if there was more explanation, because it is a public-facing report. The press sees this, members of the public can see it, that there is more clarity about why, what's it retained for, can we get our hands back on it, and you know, is it available? Those kinds of layman type terms about the use and why that money's there, because some people would say that's £110 million worth of council taxpayers' money. Why is it with Birmingham or, well, you know, West Dunbartonshire? Why are we lending it to Scotland, you know, etc.? I don't think we've got any Welsh authorities on there, so they must be doing very well. You know, it's just that perception kind of thing, and how it could be probably done a slightly different way, so that clarity's there. That's just a you know, a glance at the report and how it could be, but how I feel it could be improved in later.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, Graham or Tony, please come in, and then I'll attempt to give a layman's answer as well, because I've received a significant amount of emails on it due to the mischief making, and can tell you that every person that I replied to said, oh, right, well, now you've explained it, it's actually a very good thing that you do. So Graham, do you want to come in?
Yes, thanks, Leader. So, yeah, obviously, we'll take Councillor Wilkinson's comments into account of the review of the next report. Yeah, I appreciate that perhaps it isn't quite as accessible to members of the public as perhaps it could be. So we'll endeavour to increase the amount of explanation in there. But what I would say about the lending that the council does, we are comfortable lending to other local authorities because ultimately they are underpinned by the UK government. And the government has shown, and I know we've now recently had a change in government, but the UK government has shown through its actions that it is not prepared to allow public entities to enter a state of being unable to repay their debts. You know, the measures that the UK government has required from councils that have issued Section 114 notice may be painful for local, local council taxpayers, and may be painful for the services offered to them. But the government is quite clear that they will expect councils to honour their obligations in terms of finances. So as a council, we're quite happy to make investments in other local governments, because other local government organisations, because we feel it is about as safe as any investment we could possibly make. The other point I'd really like to make about this is choosing not to make an investment is in itself an investment of a kind, because if we do not take this money out of our bank account, we are in effect investing with our own banker. And obviously, if we spread this money around the 15, 20 counterparties that we see in this list here, there's a far lower risk in that than leaving all the money in one place. And the final point I'd make is, when we make these investments, they generate return to the council that we would not get from leaving the money in our bank account, in the same way as in a person's current account. You generally do not receive interest on your current account. The council does not receive a return on its normal bank accounts. So we look to invest surplus money in other organisations to generate a return. That return helps to boost our reserves, which obviously gives us flexibility in future years to deal with whatever comes down the line.
Yeah, go on, David. Yeah.
It's just the word. Just, I know I'm maybe nitpicking about words, but I think you have to, I think, for argument's sake, us as politicians can see, and Nick will probably know where I'm going. A word can mean one thing to somebody, but it can be quite easily turned into something else.
I know the word you picked up on here.
The word
surplus. Surplus, yeah.
Yeah, it could be, well, why have you got all that surplus? Why have you taken this money away from me? I could have a new park, or I could have a 50 quid a year cut. I think we have to be sometimes also careful about language. So maybe there's a different way of phrasing what this money really is. That's just,
just to clarify that point. So there's a big difference between the cash that the council has available to it at any one point in time and the council's budget to deliver services. In the same way that an individual will have a lot of cash at the point they are paid in a month, but as the month goes on, that amount of cash will reduce. It is exactly the same situation for the council. Obviously, we have grants that come in from government. We have money that comes in for businesses through business rates. We have money that comes in through council tax, and the timing of those receipts dictates how much cash is in the council's bank accounts at any one time. So what we will look to do is, when we have money that is available for investment in the council's bank accounts, we will look to invest it to earn a return until such time as we need that money back to pay whatever we need to pay. That is a distinct arrangement to the council's budget. And what I would point out is that the total amount of invested at any one time is far less than the council's budget for a year. The money here is not taken away from providing services. It is used to generate more money in future to deliver services.
Yeah, I mean that's the reality. It's a surplus at a given point in time. People need to understand that a lot of people who don't generate any cash surpluses on their accounts, they get their wage and they spend that wage within the month, and then at the end of the month they're waiting for the next wage to come in. The council finances don't work like that. We obviously have big surpluses at any one moment in time that we're not able to immediately spend that money. It is going to be spent, but it's going to be spent further down the line. And so we make that money work for us on a temporary basis. And what was the actual figure it generated in the last financial year, Graham?
We're talking around £8 to £8.5 million.
So the reality is, and this is the point I made to the dozen people who emailed me, who were told to email me, by the way, to demand why we were giving money away to other councils. And when I explained to them the fact that if we didn't do this, we'd be £7 million short, we'd have to make £7 million more revenue cuts people clearly then understood. But I think you're right, David. There was mischief making, and all it does that, especially pre-election, is just causes damage to the reputation of the council. It causes misunderstanding, and it's not welcome. So thank you very much for bringing it up, Dave. Tony, did you want to add anything else there?
Probably not really, to be honest. I forgot I'd still got it raised. You've covered pretty much everything in terms of what it is. Yes, we can get our hands on it. Most of it we've got out for a minimum of, say, 6 months at a time, because that's where we get the best rate. The top 3 or 4, that is our instant access cash. So that's the cash that we have for our day-to-day outgoings, if you like, such as salaries. And as everyone said, yes, it's money that we're effectively getting the best benefit of in the short term.
Thank you very much. Any further points in this report? If not, I can approve that report. And the item 3 is the aggregate financial monitor for Q4.
That will also be myself, Leader. Thank you very much. So the aggregate Q4 monitor is a summary of the financial performance of the council during Q4. It is based on reports that are taken to individual ECM meetings during the year and will have been presented to variously adults, children's, Department of Place, etc. What this report shows is that at the end of the year, Q4, there was a surplus overall of £8.9 million versus the budget. That the capital expenditure was just under £76 million during the year. That the £4.3 million worth of savings that had been built into the budget had been retained, had been achieved during the year. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to draw attention to Table 1, which is the aggregate financial position. And particularly, there are a couple of lines in there around financial services and children's services, the budget adjustments. Now, during the budgeting for the 23-24 year, there were around £11 million worth of demand budgets built in corporately to be able to release to departments during the year as necessary. So you will see that the financial services reduced their budget by £11 million, and you will see where that went to other departments. But the key department that required support during the year was children's services. So children's services were supported by nearly £7 million during the year. Which was necessary because of the demand issues within the children's services department, which we have been discussed previously, but are a national issue that we're seeing up and down the country around the very high cost of children placements and the increasing demand. I'd like to then draw your attention to Table 2, which is the projected outturn, and what that will show is the position at the year end. And again, particularly, I'd like to mention children's services. So children's services shows a overspend position of £6.6 million. The key point here is that overspend is after the additional support that was provided by corporate. So during the year, children's services received around £7 million of additional support, and at the end of the year were still another £7 million overspent. This is a very challenging financial situation. Obviously, members will be aware that there has been a newly appointed Director of Children's Services. There are demand strategy working groups within Children's Services looking at the financial issues in there. But I just need to point out that this is a very challenging situation that needs to be addressed in the longer term. I think the situation, like I say, is a national situation. There are items that are outside the control of the department and indeed the council, but it is something that we do need to focus on very closely. There has been an overall increase in the council's reserves during the year. So in Table 4, you will see that certainly there was an increase in the reserves around the financial arrangements, and that is principally because of two main items. Firstly, we generated a lot more interest on our investments, as we discussed in the previous report. And we also had previously made a provision in our accounts on the off chance that Manchester Airport wanted to delay payments to the loans that we'd made to them. Having returned to the scheduled repayment programme that Manchester Airport had previously agreed, we'd now reversed that provision in our accounts, and that released some funds into our reserves. So that's the principal driver around the increase in the financial arrangement reserves. Overall, like I say, the council's reserves have increased and are at a fairly comfortable level, particularly in comparison to other Greater Manchester authorities and other authorities around the UK. I'm happy to take any questions about this report.
Thanks, Graham, and thanks for making particularly highlighting the children's services issue. Councillor Wilkinson. You're on mute, David.
Thanks, Nick. I mean, I think, it was discussed at the last council meeting, the issue around children's services. So I think we're all well aware that, we're just creeping, forever forward in terms of amounts of money we're going to, in some cases, it'll break quite a few councils in the next few years unless something is really done, because you can't sustain the ever increasing demand of children's services. It's just not possible. Some local authorities will go under. So hopefully the new government will look at some of the issues around there. I mean, if you look at the planning list every week, there's somebody wanting to open another children's home, and I don't think they're doing it for the benefit of kids. Actually, it's the bottom line and how much money they can make, but that's another issue. Just in terms of, and I know I'm asking you, Nick, as leader, in terms of the Manchester Airport money coming in, which is good to see because the airport seems to be picking up again. People are, travelling, etc. Is there any allocation to that, or is it just going into reserves, or will it be used for things, shall I say? Okay.
It's probably best if Graham or Tony answers that, but there's two elements to Manchester Airport. Members will remember we used to get the dividend. That's no longer there because of the COVID lockdown. But in addition, all the GM authorities had to give big loans to Manchester Airport to keep it from going under. So the first element, correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, is the repayments of the loans. Only until we get to that point where the loans are repaid will we then start seeing the dividends coming in, and that is then that cash windfall that we've been used to seeing towards the end of the previous financial year. But Graham, any further detail on that?
Just to clarify, the money we were talking about from the airport is around the repayment of loans, so the interest of the loans, not the dividend. Obviously, the dividend for Manchester Airport is a decision taken by Manchester Airport's board. They will take the decision that they feel is most appropriate for the business as a whole. Given the disruption that was caused by the COVID lockdowns, obviously their finances took a significant hit during the COVID period. They took actions to ensure that the finances of the airport were on a stable footing. But it does take time to unwind that position that they've had to take. My understanding is that there's no indication that dividends will be paid by the airport for the foreseeable future. But again, obviously that is the decision of the airport's board. However, the payments of the loans the loan interest has resumed. There is a programme to repay the deferred interest. So it was the deferred interest that I was referring to in terms of the provision we'd made. We did not at any point expect the airport not to repay us, but it was a prudent accounting adjustment that we were required to make because of our accounting policies, where we put a provision in the accounts. It's that unwinding of that provision. In terms of the money available to us, the interest received from the airport is included in our budget as is. It's not additional money available to spend. Obviously, at the point where airport dividends do resume, there will be a conversation to be discussed around what, if anything, can be done with that. But I must point out that at the time, that £100 million worth of borrowing that was taken out to support the regeneration of the town centre, the airport dividend was earmarked as supporting the interest costs of that borrowing. So, I'd say we need to be very cautious about the thought that money coming in from the airport is available to do additional things.
So in broad terms, we had budgeted with an expectation, but what we're receiving is a bit above that expectation, so it's slightly better. Tony?
Yeah, it's just really on the dividend. We've just got to be careful because there's no guarantee of it at all. I think the unfortunate thing is that pre-COVID we were expecting it, and as we said, we assumed that the £100 million borrowing on the back of that will be covered by the dividend. Clearly, the airport itself has got a lot of capital investment to do over the coming years. I think Terminal 1 closes in 2025. So there's that balance between their shareholders and keeping the likes of, for example, Ryanair or whoever is happy and that the airport's fit for purpose going forward. So yeah, there's no expectation of any dividend in the foreseeable future at the minute.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further points? Councillor Hewitt?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I remember the bailout for Manchester Airport. And is there any indication now from them that the timescales for the repayment, is that still proceeding at pace as they expected at the time, or is it still on programme? Whether you could give an update on that, great.
Certainly, Councillor. Yes, in very simple terms, yes, the repayment of the loans is on schedule. Obviously, there was some disruption because of COVID. That meant the rescheduling of some of the interest payments from the older loans, but they are engaged in what they're called catch-up payments. So there's a schedule for catch-up payments for interest that was deferred. That schedule is being adhered to. We have no concerns over the money coming in from the airport.
Thank you.
And it's fair to say the catch-up payments are ramping up over the next few years as well.
As their business has started
and they've started to ramp up. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. That concludes the meeting then.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.